Good evening, good afternoon, thanks for coming. I just want to take a quick moment to introduce our presenters from Statistical Research Incorporated, or SRI, and thank them. They have spent the better part of the week here, not to mention many hours on the phone and email with me to come to this point. Dr. Terry Majewski, perfect, and Dr. Amy Combs. So, welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if you could just bring up the PowerPoint, and then I'll say just a couple little things and then turn it over to you.
There we go.
And then we click it. Is it a right click kind of situation?
You want that? Oh, yep, you can just scroll.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds
Or
good.
maybe it would use the clicker. But you can certainly scroll.
Okay.
Okay.
So if I don't scroll to the end here, eek. Scroll. Oop, there we go. So our company, Statistical Research, Inc., it's an unlikely name for a preservation and archaeology, history, historic preservation. We work a lot with tribes. We have offices all over the West, but we have people working actually all over the country now. So we've been in business 40 years, and we take great pride in responsible stewardship and working really with our clients to find solutions. We do a lot of public outreach, tribal outreach. One thing we're very proud of is we try to go the extra mile and not just do the bare minimum to get the job done. So that's really important to us. And because I believe so much in the company, I've been with them 30 years. So that's very frightening. But I've been happy there and introduced to lots of things. Oh, let's see if I can scroll. I'm really having trouble with this, sorry. Do I have to be down here? There we go. So here I am as the project lead, and I'm actually an executive vice president of the company, but I'm not sure really what that means. But the really key part is that I'm the lead of our historic program. And I founded it. I was the founding director like a number of years ago, and then as I moved up in the company, other people, I hired them to do that, and then we've been without a director for a bit, and I've been raising my hand, and they've been ignoring me, and then I got the call, we kind of need you to come back. I'm like, okay, so I'm back. And Phil Leckman is out of our Albuquerque office. He's head of our cartography and geospatial technologies, working a lot with GIS, representations, mapping, things like that. And he's working with us on the story map that we're doing. And then Amy is our architectural historian, one of several we have for the company, but Amy's done a lot of similar work to this, so we prepared the proposal, and I wanted to thank David Bova for selecting us, for the city to select us and get me back down to St. Genevieve, because I worked here in the 80s, late 80s, down doing archaeology down near the saline on the Krylik property, and we had Earthwatch teams a couple years, bringing a lot of young people in, and then we had a National Endowment for the Humanities grant, and we excavated a posting ground house. We did a survey of the whole Saline Creek to try to find different sites where people were doing different functions there, because it was a very interesting analysis of how people did land use, really. And what else? We also had part of the NEH project was going to the archives in Seville. We had a historian working for us, collecting a lot of the documents that were in Spanish and in French, because of the different people who were in charge here in St. Genevieve. But one thing the Spanish were great at keeping records, so we collected lots and lots of stuff in there. They're at the Missouri Historical Society in Columbia, if you're ever interested. And so it's great to be back. And when I first drove into town, I'm like, it sure looks different, but things are coming back to me now. So that was a long time ago. So I'm going to turn this over to Amy, and she's going to take you through a description of our project. And then, does everyone have one of these that's come in, or do they need one? I think you might need one. Yeah. And please, everybody sign the the attendance sheet is really important. And did I miss anyone over here? Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's really such a privilege to be able to be here and to work here in St. Genevieve. This is actually my first trip to St. Genevieve, despite having done a bit of work as a historic preservationist in the Illinois country, and I can already tell what an extremely special community this is, not just in terms of the incredible resources that are here from a historic preservation perspective, but also just in terms of how wonderful the community itself is. I already know a lot of you here. It's been wonderful getting to know some of you and to see the resources that you so carefully steward and care for. I already feel like I'm part of the community. I have a stylist to return to to someone over here. I have, thank you to give for someone who gave us a lot of their time a few days ago, and other faces in the room that I know we're going to be working with over the next couple of days before we head back. So thank you. And I'm here today really just to present the sort of architecture of the story map that we're putting together for the city of St. Genevieve, and to walk you through what that means, to sort of create a virtual walking tour, what the story map will include, and how we've selected sites for the story map, how the narratives are going to be curated and prepared. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you can offer feedback as members of the public and as stewards of resources here in St. Genevieve. So what is a story map? What is a virtual walking tour? So you might have seen some of these popping up here and there in Missouri and in other locations. I'm going to give you a couple of slides towards the end of my presentation to kind of compare and contrast the work we're doing here in St. Genevieve to the example in Herman and also Lexington, Missouri. But as you can see, there are points on a map, and as you click on the points, you have the option to say, listen to an audio narrative, maybe to scroll through some photos of the site. So if we were to click play right now, we would hear about this particular site in Herman. The state, let's see, we'll do number 1. So as you click through, you can look at images that pop up. Some of them are historic, some of them are going to be actual images of the current site. And so this is the sort of thing that we're going to be doing with some key differences for St. Genevieve. And then, of course, we get asked this question a lot. You don't actually have to be sitting or standing in front of the site to hear the narrative, to listen to the audio clip about it, or to look through the photos. You could do this from a hotel room on the other side of St. Genevieve. You could do this from my house in Indianapolis, where I live. You could do this from Terry's house, on the other side of Missouri. So this is virtual in the sense that it's connected to a URL. And in our case, there will also be a QR code that will open and will take you to, the map. And we're hoping to offer a suite of features such as hoping to do real-time navigation if it's not too data intensive. And you'll be able to move, kind of watch yourself move towards the point as you're walking closer and closer. And then as you get to the point, or if you're far away from the point, you'll have the option to click on that location point, and, the box will open and you'll have the option to listen to the narrative or, read a narrative. So in our particular case, we chose 50 sites as part of the process, and that's what was requested in the RFP, the request for proposals that we responded to with our bid. And 30 of these 50 sites will have audio. 20 of them are non-narrated, so there will be a little, written blurb about them, a written narrative, but it will not be narrated. So for 30 of them, you'll actually hear, a voice talking to you about the site. We're hoping to maybe have a little bit of fiddle music introducing the clip. We're looking for maybe some local musicians, and we've narrowed down a list. And we're not going to do, we can talk a little bit more about what we're going to do and not do sort of from an artistic perspective as we maybe move through the presentation. But the narratives generally will focus on architecture and history and on the people who lived in the houses or people who first settled the history of slavery, Native American history, sometimes folklore, culture, and, the things that make Saint Genevieve through all of the periods of significance. So we have sites that represent a really wide range of history. And of course, this is free for users in the city, and that's something that was really important to David and also really important to us. So you might notice the Herman walking tour is actually hosted by a site called, I think, GuideGo. They're paying a fee, and other sites, as we did research across states to see how these, municipalities were hosting their virtual walking tours, a lot of them do actually charge access, fees. Even to download the virtual walking tour, you might have to just pay a couple of dollars. We're not going to do that. So what we did is a little bit different in that we partnered with the SEMO Regional Planning Commission to use their GIS, their ArcGIS license, and we're working with an ArcGIS platform called Esri Story Map. And because that's already, available through the county and through the regional licensing, there will be no fee for users and there will be no fee for the city to maintain the data over time. So excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. The city provided us with about 78 historic resources in significant locations, and we narrowed this down to about 59, just based on the distribution of the site, wanting to kind of keep not necessarily a really tight cluster, but keep things sort of walkable, if you will. And also just focusing on some of the architectural thematics and the narrative thematics here in Saint Genevieve. And then we worked with local historians, thank you, and with Bob Mueller and Jim Baker to narrow the list down to 50 sites. Truth be told, they actually expanded our list before we worked together to narrow it. But we did get there. In fact, we actually just had a meeting kind of making some of the final decisions. So again, 30 sites are selected for narration. We have 20 sites that will not be narrated for 50 total. And if you're looking at the map and wondering, is my house on the map? Or what if I don't want this particular location on the map, but I would really like this location? We have a very small amount of flexibility at this point because we're early in the process. That's part of what the public feedback process is for. You're welcome to engage in that. We'll talk about how you can do that a little bit later in the talk. But the location points are pretty much set now. So we can talk a little bit about what those, where they are and what we're going to feature on as we move forward with the talk. But, again, if someone feels really strongly, we definitely want to hear from you. So we have our 75 points that we started with, and this just kind of shows the total dispersal. So that's a pretty long walk. And then we narrowed down our 30 in a slightly tighter core area. And these will be the narrated, and really focusing on a diverse range of resources. And then
You mentioned this too, that how they're
yeah, thanks, Terry. So if you look at this list that I actually just updated, this is hot off the press. After our meeting our meeting right before this event, we kind of went through and removed, I think, 6 and added 6 from a previously removed list and added the post office. So if you look at the narration, there's a Y or an N, and there are 30 Ys, of course, for the 30 narration points. So this is our yellow, and then the blue is no for narration, and that goes on to the back side. So there are 20 of those. And these red dots are the ones that have been removed. So these are part of that original 78 list that didn't make the final cut, perhaps because they were too far out, or maybe the architectural style or the history they were showing was a little bit redundant. We don't want every stop in the tour to be about the same people. We wanted to show kind of a wider range of history, moving into the art colony in the early 20th century, maybe even talk about some contemporary culture. So this list is almost correct. It was correct until about 10 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago. So again, rely on this list if you do have comments that you'd like to make. And same here for the 20. So I'm sure that you guys recognize a lot of these resources, and I know that some of you, are directing and sitting on boards and even live in some of these resources.
You mentioned the cemetery, what we're doing there.
Yeah, so we had a special request maybe to include a couple of additional points at the cemetery because, of course, the cemetery is just a little bit farther out. We originally had one narrated location at the cemetery, and everyone said, well, if we're going to walk all the way out to the cemetery, wouldn't it be nice to maybe have a couple of other stops? And we added 2 additional stops, and our historians negotiated us down to 1 so that they could add the Brooks House back onto the list. So we're currently with 1 narrated location at the cemetery, and we have 1 additional location. We're deciding where exactly to put that. So
there's 1 narrated and 1 non-narrated.
1 narrated and 1 non-narrated, exactly. So, and we had some really good suggestions during our last meeting as far as what sites we should include for those, but we're still making the final decision. So please let us know if you have, particular favorite spots in the cemetery that you'd like to visit. We'll probably do 1 around the entrance and then maybe 1 inside the cemetery. So returning to the Lexington, Missouri example, this is a static map, and as you find your own way there, you click on the location point and it opens and you have an audio narrative that you can listen to. And their audio narratives are, really a lot of fun. They had actors play character parts. So you have different voices sometimes in the same clip. You hear the glasses clinking at a tea party. You hear the cannons going off, in the war. We're not going to be quite that fancy, in part because we really wanted to focus our resources more on the research stage of the process. And some of those commitments are a little bit more high budget in terms of having to negotiate some of the, the fees and the permissions for the uses. And the Lexington, Missouri example is one that actually gives you directions at the end of each point. It says, now please proceed down, Main Street and take your first left to get to the next point. We're going to do things just a little bit differently in that, we're hoping to have the real-time navigation feature. And if not, the map itself will not be entirely static. So people will be able to find their way around it. Even if not in real time, they'll be able to click in destination points and see the route. Or there will be a link to a Google Maps that will open up from it. So one way or another, we'll be navigating you there through the function. And we're going to be focusing really more on just a simple narration of the history. And, it'll be the same narrator voice from narrative to narrative with a musical segue and exit. And then with Herman, Herman was a really fun example of, a lot of historical photos for one resource, and then the next resource might not really have any. A lot of party photos for one resource, and then the next resource might only have 1 or 2 photos. So we were thinking more about how we could streamline photos, and we're going to talk a little bit more in the presentation about how you can send us photos or historic photos, or send us links to repositories if you know of good resources that we might be able to include. But we're really hoping to be consistent and maybe have between maybe 2 and 4 photos per resource. And we're also going to streamline the length of the narration. So Herman did some really fun pieces, but some of them are as long as 7 minutes. We thought that might be a little bit long for the average St. Gen listener because you have such a wide range of, tourists and people coming through with children and maybe aging parents. So we wanted this to be accessible for everyone. We're really going to be focusing the narratives on maybe 1.5 to 2.5 minutes at the most. Some of them might be a little bit shorter. So for every 2.5, we'll probably have a 1 minute to kind of balance that out. that also helps us distribute the data, like the data load in the application. Similarly with kind of narrowing down the number of photos. And from that, we can offer a more consistent and a more seamless user experience. So part of the problem with applications like the Herman application, it is hosted through a platform, but of course they're paying for this service, right? When you take an application that, we're not paying for the data, if you will. We have a little bit less to work with, if you will. But Esri is still an extremely high quality example. And moving to the resources that we decided to work with, we've worked with Esri, ArcGIS, Esri story maps in the past and had a lot of really positive experiences with them as a company, just in that we can interface with all of the GIS layers at the county, with historic GIS layers, with for example, in St. Genevieve, there's a historic district layer that's accessible through the county, and they actually have photos stored through that. So for us, it's a lot easier to navigate some of that data into the story map because that's all hosted on ArcGIS. So working with ArcGIS Story Map is not only free, it's also a much more professional option in terms of the data management, if you will, and the data storage options. So, ArcGIS is meant to be a mapping and navigation tool, and so it's a perfect fit for this particular project. And this slide is about a project that SRI did for the Edwards Air Force Base. We did a story map for one of their solar projects. We created an ArcGIS story map and focused on the archaeology of Bissell Basin. So you guys can link to that if you want to take a closer look at some of our past work. So how will the St. Genevieve story map compare? We've talked about this a little bit, that we're going to be averaging the lengths of the clips. We're going to be using music mainly just as a segue in the intro and maybe a fade out at the end. We're going to have a mix of architectural history, some character stories, and historic events. And we're really going to be focusing the photos so that there's at least one photo of the resource as it stands today. And that resource might come from the county GIS layer, or it might come from my camera. That's part of what I've been doing here in town, is some field work to collect photos and location points in front of all of the resources. And we're really hoping to create a place-based narrative from this so that the thematic relationships between not just the architecture, but the culture, the individuals as they represent the evolution of St. Genevieve's culture over time, really come out through the user's experience as they're walking. And even if you skip maybe certain points, maybe you decide to stop for dinner and find yourself on another side of town and pick up the walk over here, you'll still really be able to, see the change in the architecture as it moves from the French Creole, into the early 19th century, and then into some of the more contemporary, mid 20th century kind of matchbox and American structures. You'll be able to think about what does it mean to be part of a French Creole culture today, and where did all of this come from. So again, the features we're hoping to focus on are the real-time navigation, the one narrator voice to create more of a cohesive user experience, a centralized route, and we're really hoping to provide, and this is where you guys can come into, links to resources. So not just, if you own a B&B or a restaurant, or, if there are events at the museum and you have an event page, but also, if you have, say, a resource guide for the cemetery that's in PDF form, we can provide a link to that. If you're an institution that's managing those sorts of resources, we can link out from the cemetery site. So there are a lot of ways that we can incorporate the work that you guys are doing locally into the audio tour. So please keep us posted as you have ideas on that. And then the story map will open from a URL or from a QR code. So it will be accessible on any application, on any platform, anywhere that you can type in a URL or download a URL from a QR code. So. Excuse me. So our project timeline has already been a bit delayed due to the snowstorm. We were hoping to be here visiting you guys in January and hoping that we could take advantage of the trees being down. the leaves being down on the trees and really get a good shot of some of the roof lines that you can't see as much. That's me thinking as an architectural historian. But the snow outsmarted us. March is an okay compromise. There's still some magnolias starting to bloom, but still some really great photo opportunities. Public comments, excuse me, for the site selection, we're hoping to have in within maybe the next 3 weeks or so by mid-April. And I'm hoping to be completing narratives by the end of May, maybe the first week in June. And then we'll go through a comment period on the narratives with Dave facilitating that through the summer. Hoping to have our final public meeting in August. And you guys will have the opportunity maybe to help us beta test before then. So. All right. So please reach out to me directly, reach out to Dave, share photos of houses, within reason, as long as the file isn't too large. If the file is too small, we won't be able to load it. So I think for Story Map, it's, the typical 500 KB to 1 megabyte, and that can be JPEG, GIF, TIFF, the typical file formats. I can convert a PDF, but it might lose quality. Share historic drawings, and reach out if you want to review narratives for select locations. I don't know if, I don't think that the final narrative list will be available to everyone to read, but if you represent a particular institution or if your house is on the tour, you'll definitely have the freedom, you'll definitely be welcome to review if you want to. Otherwise, if you're concerned, have other interests, reach out to Dave and maybe work out an opportunity to look at the full list of narratives. And if you have any particular concerns, just reach out to me directly. We definitely want to hear from you. Questions, concerns, ideas, comments, by email. We can set up a time to chat by Teams, Zoom, or over the phone. And now, if you have any feedback now, we also would really welcome that and love to hear it. So.
And we should also mention, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, that you'll be posting the PowerPoint and the list on.
Yes, so there's a project. Yeah, on the city website under projects, we'll post this information.
Do you have any welcome thoughts?
I have one comment. It's a little tangential, but Pere Marquette Park, we're retired park planners, and we've done some volunteer work for the city applying for our grants, primarily federal money. And we've been successful in that, but one of the things that would be helpful going forward is if, I know it doesn't fit your profile for the walking tour, but if there's some reference made to the park, either a link or something, and talk about connections, because that's a big, that's a real point getter, I guess, when we apply for grants, that there's been a local recognition that all these sites are connected. So if just somehow if you could make a reference to the city park, and I don't know if you've been up there, but
Where is it exactly?
go north, pull it the other way. I think it was a red dot on one of your previous maps.
Going quite a ways.
Oh, there's a cloud over it.
Keep going.
Go up river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, I see.
Maybe we could reference it at Gage Park.
Okay.
If you can put any kind of reference into this plan, it helps a lot when we go applying for, especially federal money.
Oh, okay. Are there any particular connections between your park and the flood, or your park and?
Well, Pere Marquette, obviously. Sorry, speak up.
Yeah, I think the other connections with Little Rock Landing and the ferry and that sort of thing.
Okay.
It's a large piece of property. It's a beautiful piece of property, and we're trying. And we do have sidewalks that go all the way from downtown out there. I've walked it many times. It is. I mean, it's out of downtown. It's not in the historic district per se, but
Yeah, I think it's a little bit. It would be a little bit of a walk from our core kind of cluster. We have the River Gage Park, so I think we're just looking at needing to move the point over here. So it's possible that maybe even in the, not in the main blurb, but maybe below it where we have links, we could say visit other local parks. So if you wanted to maybe just email one or two quick lines about it, like something catchy that was really short, and the appropriate link, and maybe like a GPS location point or like a Google Maps location point.
It's on the city website, it's referenced, right? So
Okay.
anytime you mention connections and connections to parks and to other public facilities, it really helps with the grant writing as far as getting points.
So highlighting connections is really
Connections
useful.
is huge. And we were on my husband and I were on a team through the National Park Service a couple years ago. Actually, it was during COVID because we did everything on Zoom. And that was it was through Rivers and Trails. And that was a big point of discussion, was sidewalks and connections.
Okay.
So even if that's
Mississippi grant.
yeah, that study's not that old. Even if reference could in the text or something be made to that, all those things that show that we're getting public input and planning, and that it's a group effort, and the big kumbaya kind of thing, that's all connected, makes a big difference.
Okay.
Is that something you can do maybe at the end of the whole presentation, if we will, at the end of it, just provide those quick little, even if it's just an address link to, or something that says, see other local sites, and just have those quick address links where they can, the name like Pier Park, and they can just click that and it'll take them to a Google map or something that they can go there at another time, or
It's
whatever,
possible.
after they've done the walk,
Yeah, it's possible. The story map will load basically as a web page, so there will be the map that will be embedded, and that will be the focal point. But if you scroll down, there's the opportunity to add additional
without adding
content.
too much to it.
So we might be able to do something like that. We'll have to talk about it, but it's also possible that we can provide other similar links to other similar resources on sort of a stop-by-stop basis as appropriate. And I really like the idea of thinking more holistically about connections between resources and how we can highlight that. That's really great feedback.
Well, and just to tie everybody's brains together on this, we have that big grant right now that we're administering through the state for welcome and wayfinding. And what I'm using is that RTCA grant that you worked on to get pendant signs made that we can walk people, so maybe we name the trail that Pere Marquette would be on, and then we can reference, hey, this stop on River Gage Park is, part of this trail that you could keep taking that'll get you to Pere Marquette, and maybe the wildlife refuge and things like that. So we can
That's awesome. Anytime you can show that all those plans are connected somehow and that people are working together, it really helps with writing the grants, applying for grants.
Great.
That's awesome.
And along that same line, perhaps when the narration talks about the river at Gage Park, access directly to the river is available at the St. Genevieve branch of the Middle Mississippi Refuge, which will be developed by that point in time that this comes out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be good to know. If you could provide us with some more information about that, that would be helpful.
Certainly.
We also have a stop down here for the big field that's also going to talk about I think we passed
Right
it.
there.
And I think we're actually going to do the stop for the big field close to the NPS sites. It's kind of talk about, as you look out, this is what you might have seen back then. It's very similar. And we'll probably talk about the Old Town site and where it is. So this might be a place where we can talk about river access too. So, but definitely let us know, as you kind of take a look at the full list, which I'm hoping this is pretty much done. Let us know where you'd like us to stick those things. So where you'd like us to put those things. And this is the sort of spatial distribution of our sites so far. You can see the cluster that I was talking about. So the green points are places where I've already started to take point locations, which will be where the actual dot on the live virtual tour will be. And then this is the corresponding yellow or blue or red dot is just what loaded through the county GIS layer or through, the real ID, this is the GIS location, like this, either the address location or what have you. So the yellow again is the narrated site, the blue is the non-narrated, and then the red are the sort of outtakes. But you can see how we've really been trying to kind of concentrate resources along the main sort of arteries of St. Genevieve, with a couple of really nice little walks. I was really impressed by how wonderful this little walk is down here when I did this area today, down by the tavern and that nice little bridge across the brook, and down by the Moses Austin house. So any other thoughts or comments, questions?
Quiet bunch.
Did you find anything that was surprising to you that you have done a lot of the research remotely, but coming here for the first time, does it? The Norman trust system is really incredible in person. I mean, I knew what it was in my mind, but I think seeing it in person, especially without the nails and seeing how it's just almost like a force game, with the wooden pegs and how much really craftsmanship there was involved in the hewn logs and balancing and forming the distribution of weight. So that was pretty incredible. So being able to wander around in your rooftops has been a really great experience as an architectural historian.
Well, and I really enjoyed first of all, when we're doing field work together, my job is to keep Amy from getting run over when she's taking pictures and stuff. Because, these photographers, they just, you get caught up in that. And so I was standing near Audubon's, and a gentleman walked out with his beer from the bar and wondered what we were doing. And so I had a nice chat with him. And then another time, and Aaron, I think you met this person. He's the guy.
Stephen Martin.
Yeah, the guy that does river tours.
Yeah.
He was fascinating. So we were photographing the B&B where he was staying. And I thought it was maybe the owner going to come up to say, "What are you doing?" I'm like, we're just doing this. And anyway, we talked for like 20 minutes while she was trying not to get run over. And but it was fascinating because we talked for a lot of things, and I learned what they were doing. And so this town is really great for people looking for opportunities to come here and connect. And what he was talking about with you was exciting. So.
Oh, absolutely. So I met with a guy named Stephen Marking. He works for American Cruise Lines, and he was talking about the new boats can actually, I think the narrative has been that they can't pull up on the ferry landing, and the port doesn't have the equipment. But quite honestly, he went and looked at the ferry landing and said, we could pull an American Cruise Line boat up to this and get off. So he's going to be petitioning American Cruise Lines to add us as a stop, especially from that Memphis to St. Louis trek, because they stop at Cape Girardeau, St. Louis, and Alton, and that's it. And he called us the Natchez of the Middle Mississippi. So I thought that was very sweet of him.
I can get you more contacts from the agents.
Oh, great.
I've worked with them personally.
Oh, excellent. Wow. There we go. See, this is why it's great to have things like this.
When you have a candy Kathy like me, I'm like, hello, I'll visit with you. And, I live in another part of Missouri, and anyway, it's great. And one other thing we're going to do is try to draw some threads about the importance of historic preservation and sort of community participation in that and community buy-in, and how important all those things are. But I mean, I've worked with many clients and many projects over the years, and I echo what Amy said about feeling accepted, feeling like, coming home after working here in the 80s when I was an impressionable young PhD. I'm a less impressionable old PhD. but it's really nice to come back into something that's still so important and growing. I mean, it's not like something that happened and then it sort of tapered off, the interest in. And I lived in Tucson 30 years and was head of the Historic Preservation Commission for 20 of those years. But, just so experiencing talking to David about working with historic homeowners and, granting and design review and code violations. I mean, you know, you see what it is, and that there's people that are interested in people that, how they could not know that they lived in a historic neighborhood is beyond me. So we're trying to have realtor training, you know, so that disclosure, because that's an important disclosure clause. But anyway, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all and work with, for Amy and I to work here in such a friendly way.
Yeah, thank you. And if you see me standing in front of your house with the camera over the next 2 days, you'll know what I'm doing with Terry, making sure that I'm not getting hit. Yeah, but so please come out and say hello, and please reach out by email and stay in contact. So
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.